Stay tuned for exclusive content from the Written Sins Network.
Alright guys, here it is, Mr. Andersin Reviews number 1. Today we're reviewing Morgan's Organs. We had the opportunity to talk to the creator in the past, and we have his interview on our site. Just look up Morgan's Organs on writtensins.com and you'll find his interview. We also have his website at morgansorgans.com where you can see a comic preview before actually purchasing it. It's made by Brody and Genix. We also have to offer you the book itself at the morganorgans.com store, where you can actually buy a physical copy for $4.50 plus shipping, and that's for 40 pages. Now the format we're going by is going to be the same as it is on our site whenever we do a review of something. We're going to be using the 7 deadly questions, giving us the 7 questions that we'll be basing our review of the comic book on. And by our, I mean mine, Mr. Andersin. So, starting today with this first one, the first question we got to ask is, was it worth the cover price? Now, for me, I had to actually get it, like most of you will. And if you're like me, you like the hard copy. You don't like cheap digital versions because you can't hold them. It's not the same thing. I mean, if you're in a pinch and you need to read it, or you can't get it because they're not local and they can't ship it to you, or shipping costs are great, I understand that. Doing the digital, I do it occasionally for myself as well. But in this case, I thought it was worth it. I did get very excited right away when I was talking to the creator about just doing an interview. We wound up meeting on Twitter, and I really thought that this project looked very promising. And he actually is one of the many people who would ask me to do a review way before I was doing reviews. So, already reading it, already have been through the whole issue, I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, I think it was well worth the money. I'm going to show you a little bit of the preview for the comic book that he has on his site as we're doing the rest of the questions. But yes, the first question to answer is not only was it worth the cover price, but was worth the shipping price in my opinion. Now, the second question is, did it leave me wanting a next issue or continued story? And I have to say, absolutely. Right away, I wanted to know what happens next. There's things in the story itself that lead you to wonder what else is possible and what other stories there are to be told. So it's very exciting. And right away, I'm left with the idea of wanting to actually know what's next, which as a comic book reader makes me very excited, because not only did I not waste my time or my money, but I'm also invested now and I'm curious what comes next. The third question is, was I entertained and excited to turn the page? Yeah. As someone who has ADHD, sometimes no matter how good the comic book is, no matter how much I love the characters, I wind up getting this feeling like, okay, what's next? Where are we going? Can we get to it? I almost want to skip pages just to get back into the story, because also as a writer, sometimes I know you have to explain things, and to me, sometimes that gets very boring. This story never left me felt that way. It always felt like the story was continuing in a very quick pace, and it was definitely moving, and it was never a moment where I felt like the story got stuck. The fourth question is, did the story get me emotionally invested? I don't know that I'd say that I was emotionally invested necessarily in the story as much as emotionally I was laughing. Like, that's the one thing. This story made me laugh, and that's a good thing. Sometimes it's nice to just have a story that you can go to and you can read it and you just have a good giggle. And, you know, life's too serious sometimes, and we need funny things like this to be out there. And it's amazing to be able to read a comic book and just enjoy myself and honestly laugh to the point of almost tearing, because some of the things in this, you know, they're the things that you would sit around if you're a guy with some of your buddies, even girls, sit around, and some of the things that are wound up getting said or are done in the comic are actual things you've probably seen in your life. So it's one of those moments where emotionally you can say, hey, I know about that, or I've seen that, or I know someone who did it. So in that way, it's very emotionally touching to the reader, where you can actually get that feeling of, wow, I've been there, I've seen that. Were the characters relatable and interesting? Now, the characters, if you haven't gotten the idea yet, are organs, and obviously I'm not an organ, but there are other side characters, including the person Morgan, whose organs they are. And did I find the characters relatable and interesting? Yeah. I mean, he's awkward, and, who hasn't been awkward in their life? Who hasn't made mistakes or sidesteps that wound up making them look stupid? And I think it's very honest in that way. I think the comic book itself tells a story that is very interesting and is very relatable, and I think that makes it even better because you can actually see these characters not doing movie dialogue, which a lot of comic books I think make a big mistake that way, is that they try to talk in a way that we don't normally talk, I think that they lose the actual ability to have true dialogue that characters have. And that goes for Marvel and DC. That's just not an indie thing. I think sometimes the writers try too hard to make the dialogue sound too much like it's ready for a movie. And I think some of the best dialogue is honest dialogue. And it's like, wow, that's exactly how it would sound if me and my friends were sitting around talking. Were there problems with the comic book? I can't say, honestly, that I found any problems with the comic book. I mean, I'm showing you as we're talking. You're getting to see the preview that's on www.morgans.com. I didn't see anything that I would call a problem. Honestly, I think that we can just move on to the final question because I really didn't see a problem. Do I recommend this comic to others, and what is its comic genre? Okay, if I were to give this first a genre, I would just call this a good, funny comic book. It has a sense of humor. It's interesting. It reminded me of Herman's Head for anyone who might have seen that years and years ago. And that was when the characters themselves inside of Herman's Heads were just human beings playing different parts of his psyche. And I found that show to be amazing. There's been a couple others, and I've always found them very interesting because if we're being honest, we always feel like we're torn inside. There's the things we know we should do, and we wind up doing the things we shouldn't do sometimes. So I think that stories like this are very funny, but they also go into a little bit about how it is to be human, and that's interesting in itself. Those moments where we have, self-doubt, and we make mistakes, and how we get past it. And it's interesting to think that we're not really in control, but all the organs are in control, making us who we are. It's kind of weird. So I was very entertained by it. I would definitely recommend it to anyone I knew had a sense of humor. I would recommend it to anyone. I think even if you have a very, soft sense of humor, you'd find something in here. There are moments where some people might find it, maybe a little sexually gratuitous. For certain people, I didn't think it really crossed any lines. I think it told an honest story without being vulgar. I think that it did the best it could, including right here, as you see, the character who is based on the penis actually has his head blurred. They know how to juggle it just the right way. So I think if someone's going to be offended, they're just going to be offended at most things, and they probably shouldn't be reading comic books and probably are missing a protest right now if they're watching this review. So I don't really have to worry about them because they're probably either going to protest me later or they're just going to be at a protest right now. Needless to say, it's worth the money. I was excited to read it. I think it was an amazing comic book, and I'm not saying that because I was paid to say that, as funny as that sounds. This was just one of those comics that really resonated with me. And it was really one of those things where, I paid for the comic book. I had it shipped to me. He did ask me to do a review once he knew I did interviews. But he didn't ask me to do that until he knew about interviews because I was more interested in his comic at first. So, this is done because, I personally think that most people would enjoy this. Most of the people on my Facebook friends list, most of the people on Written Sins, I think this is a comic that's well worth the money, and I would love to see this go more mainstream. I even said to the creator while we were talking that I really could see this as a cartoon, and I hope that he gets to that level. And once again, just so you know, you can get this at his website, morgansorgans.com. The first thing you get is a book preview right here, and then there's a store where you could do it. And he also did run a Kickstarter, and he was successful in that, where 176 backers pledged $5,631 to help bring this project to life. So, I mean, it's definitely worth your time. It's definitely worth the money. Please go out, check it out. I recommend it, and I'll see you at the next review. Remember to always come to writtensins.com for current news on the indie comics and the creators behind them.
Visit us at www.writtensins.com.